This week on the Unabated podcast, Alex Kane from Sporttrade stops by the show to talk sport trade, the state of betting, and more. It's a great show. Let's get to it.
If the guy goes unabated, that's the new word, unabated. That's too big a word. That's like mayonnaise. I'm assuming that's the biggest word I know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome on into the Unabated podcast. I'm Thomas Viola, and joining me, as always, Mr. Unabated himself, Captain Jack Andrews. Jack, I was looking at the Unabated odds screen yesterday. It was the most dead sports day. We are hitting the doldrums of summer here, but that doesn't mean that we don't have some exciting Unabated stuff to talk about. We have a fantastic interview coming up with Alex Kane of Sporttrade. I'm looking forward to diving into that, but just because we're hitting the doldrums of summer when it comes to the sports season doesn't mean that we're slowing down. We've got WNBA going on, and we have some pretty big baseball stuff coming up in Unabated world here, don't we?
Yeah, so we finally have some more props on the props odds screen that are now being displayed, and hopefully by the time you're hearing this podcast, many of them will also now be simmable. And you can import projections into them. I think it's a good enhancement. It increases that surface area, Tom, and that's what we're all about. Increase the surface area of attack of you versus the sports books. But you're right. This is the doldrums. Yesterday, Monday of this week, before we recorded this, was one of the more dead days, and it kind of harkens what's coming in July. Once the NHL ends, once the NBA ends. It gets to be pretty dry, but WNBA can sustain us. We got some more golf. The golf product is getting better. There's more things to be added to the golf screen very shortly. There's going to be an unabated line for golf that'll be coming out this summer. We're getting close on that. So there's a lot of things where previously we used to say, hey, see you in August. Now we're kind of saying, stick with us. We got some more stuff for you to handle. One more addition. We're going to do a little CFL, Canadian Football League action in our Discord. So if you're not a member of our Discord, but you are a premium or concierge subscriber, make sure you go into our Discord and verify yourself in there. And you're going to see some very sharp CFL content in there that hopefully you can use to grind out a few more bucks this summer.
And another great thing with that is that it's something that's A, off the odds screen, and B, off a lot of main market books. So it's a good way to get down on some stuff where the edge is going to hold out a little bit longer because there's going to be fewer people mining into it.
Yeah. No, it's a good kind of increased surface area, angle of attack that you can use over the summer. You got to be careful with it. It is tricky maintaining accounts through the summer, but there's definitely some edges there.
Yeah. And the thing about CFL, we'll see if it holds true in the next few weeks, but my favorite stat in sports.
What's that?
An American football team has won a Grey Cup more recently than a Canadian team has won a Stanley Cup. Oh. I really hope. I'm all in on the Florida Panthers. Last year, obviously rooting for the Golden Knights. Now Panthers can win it this time. Let's see it happen. Keep the Canadians from a Stanley Cup. I'm all about it.
Oh, Canada.
Yes. Let's get into it here. We've got Alex Kane to talk to from Sporttrade. I think it's time we get to that interview. I'm looking forward to hearing him.
Let's do it.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome on into the show, the head honcho, the grand poobah over at our friends with Sporttrade, Alex Kane. Alex, thank you for coming on again. It's great having you back, my friend.
Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to having a great discussion.
It's been a while since we've had you back on the pod, but what has been up? What is new with you guys over at Sporttrade?
In short, we have launched in Iowa. Super excited about that. We've seen a bit more liquidity on the venue. We're adding some market makers here, so that's exciting. Colorado is a state that is actually going to turn on exchange wagering in June, so we're so excited about putting that feature into the wild, that limit order feature that we have in New Jersey, in Colorado. And we've released a couple of features, and generally we're working towards hopefully what's going to be a successful football season.
I mean, we're all hoping for a successful football season in the doldrums of summer right now. Yesterday was one of the slowest days. We're recording this on a Tuesday, and that was there were a couple baseball games, and that was it to go on. It was tough giving out demos and being like, oh yeah, there's like 5 games today. But you guys have one interesting new feature that I saw, the tape. What's going on with that?
So the tape is a feature that's available to anyone that has an iPhone. You do not have to be in any certain state or jurisdiction. You don't even have to create an account or log in. It's available to everyone. And all it is, it's a real-time feed of all the trades that are happening in real time. So if someone bets, golf has been pretty good for us. If someone bets $10,000 on Robert McIntyre, right, to win the RBC Canadian Open on Sunday morning, boom, you see it. And if you are logged in and you do want to tail a trade, all you do is swipe right on anything, and you'll see the order window pop up, and you can put in your trade. And of course, the great thing about the tape is once you place your bet, guess what's on the tape now? Your bet. So yeah, we're excited about that feature, and I think folks kind of have liked it, which is really exciting.
That's cool.
Yeah, let me just say 2 cents about the tape. This is an interesting concept, and I think all bettors would benefit from having more information. And what this gives you is real-time clearinghouse level ticker information about trades going through the Sporttrade system. I'd love to have this concept catch on. Some offshore sports books have done this in the past, and I think it's fascinating. Maybe it's just me, but I would love to see other operators copy this from you. And wouldn't it be cool to see what's really flowing through at a FanDuel or a DraftKings? I mean, that tape must just fly by, but at the same time, a little bit of transparency might go a long way to give people a little bit more enlightening view of to how sports betting is really working.
Yeah, I totally agree, Jack. Like the cool thing about the tape is that, for us at first, like think about I know in gambling Twitter, there are people that are aware of Sporttrade, but to the audience that we're now trying to reach, it's just a green S, logo. What is this thing? So the first reason we did it is that, again, everyone sees the tape. So you download the app, you're not really sure if you're going to use it. And you see this new homepage and you click it and oh my God, someone just bet $10,000 on Robin McIntyre, or someone just bet $3,000 on, the over 11.5 live in the Reds Mets game. The validation. Okay, other people are trusting this with their money. Maybe I can too. But the long-term vision of the tape is exactly as you mentioned, Jack. Like we want to be adding things like filtering, searching, ultimately like telling the story of, I go back to the Robert McIntyre in the RBC Canadian Open final round. Prime offered an ARB to Sporttrade. And if you had just logged on to those apps an hour late, you'd kind of see that they're both offering what is not an ARB, but a 0% through the synthetic hold market. Like, how did it get there? And the tape sort of tells that story. Oh, wait, Sporttrade took a $30,000 bet at plus 108, and then a $10,000 bet at plus 106, and then a $5,000 bet at plus 102. Oh, that's how they ended up at plus 100. There's so much that can happen out of the tape, and then ultimately adding more features to it, like seeing if your bet was tailed, coming up with being able to comment on the trade potentially, understanding how many times a certain trade has been tailed. These are sort of things that could be interesting as we try to think about expanding our reach beyond just the sharpest of the sharp bettors into more of the recreational market.
It's all this stuff that goes into it that you don't even think about, but like something like this where, oh, hey, it's not just a way to see these are the bets that have been coming in. Oh, cool, I can follow this. But it is, like you mentioned, telling the story of how the market got where it did. Because like, if you pull up the unabated odds screen, you can click on a line and see, oh, this is the market history. These are the moves. But you guys are actually showing these are the bets. This is the same information that a trading room is going to have and that they're going to see coming down the line. To be able to have that information as a bettor and to see why the market is moving the way it is, that's just such a tremendous tool.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. And again, what we want to try to do is come up with features now that can bring players along this journey of ultimately thinking about sports betting a different way. And the tape can help to do that. I think if we were to just build a version of DraftKings and FanDuel, setting aside whether that's possible, it's not, right, at our team size. But if it was just a slightly better odds version of DraftKings and FanDuel, like what's the real reason someone's going to switch, right? Likely they're not. Thinking about sports betting in a different way, however, can give us a pathway to having a real sustainable business. And for me, like the way we want people to think about the tape is, you log on, it's halftime, and maybe you have an NFL favorite. They were a 7-point favorite to start the game. It's the Bills versus the Jets at the Jets, and the Bills are down 2 touchdowns at halftime. And you start to see the action come in on the Bills. And let's say it's on the money line, and you see people start betting at plus 200, and the line goes to plus 196, and then it goes to plus 192. Having that foresight to say, wait a minute, at a certain point, this line's going to get overbought. And I can see there's so much demand here on the Bills money line. Why don't I hop in and place an order and ask for a little bit better price on the Jets? And that what that allows you to do is you let the line come to you. You let the people overbuy the line in your own mind, and you have the ability to sort of, play the devil's advocate to the tape, like fade the action. So again, that's not something we want to introduce right away. It's definitely a bit more of an advanced thing. But if we can get bettors to start to think about that, it opens up just a whole new way to think about this, which is, man, I can kind of fade the public. I know that's sort of a term that is overused, but in this example, it really makes sense, because if other venues are still firm on offering plus 200 on the Bills and they slip down to plus 190 and there's still that demand, you can slip in a limit order and now you can get in on the Jets at minus 190 when the best price in the market was minus 220. So there's just going to be those abilities to sort of bring players along that journey, and we're really excited about figuring out how to ultimately get there.
That sounds really awesome. Like, I'm getting the massive FOMO being out here in Vegas, but you guys are always pushing the boundaries and doing some new stuff. But another big thing, and we've talked about it a little bit already, is your golf markets. They've been out for a little while now, but it's been a big deal. I know certain golf bettors that may or may not be affiliated with this podcast in some way, who have certainly been loving all the new features and all the new options that you have available for them. What's been going on in golf?
So golf, we released a golf Twitter account called Sporttrade_golf. Very simple avatar mission statement. We are on a mission to build the best golf product in the world. It's not there yet. And what we mean by that is that we want to have the most liquid markets on things like outrights, on things like round over unders, on things like tournament matchups. We'd love to get into round matchups. We'd love to add make, miss, cut, maybe a top 5 or top 10 market. We love staying in the more liquid side of offering sports betting markets. You probably won't see anytime soon, bets that are less liquid. I think we want to let players maybe do that on sites that are better positioned to offer those sort of things. But for us, we want to be in a position where if you're Sunday morning or Thursday afternoon or whatever it is, and you want to get the best price in the world, it's been so cool seeing the odds on unabated golf for Sporttrade. And we really have a goal together with the market makers of, we kind of want to be the place where if you want to bet sort of the main market juicy golf stuff, you're going to get a great price on Sporttrade. So a lot more work to do, but we've seen players bet $2, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30, $40,000 on golfers. And you can also bet on the no side as well, which is sort of interesting. Maybe there's a golfer that you want to fade coming into Sunday and his odds are 40%, which is plus 150, and you want to take the no side at minus 150. Sporttrade allows you to do that as well. So that's been really cool to see. And we've seen customers across the gamut from the $15 bettors to a $15,000 bettor take to it. And we just think there's so much room to run.
Yeah, it's a good example of if you build it, they will come, because you build it and the big golf bettors have been coming to New Jersey to get their bets down on this. It's definitely been a game changer for a lot of people. So kudos on a very good product so far. Let's shift focus a little bit to what just happened in Illinois last week. They introduced a tiered tax structure. Now, last time you were on the podcast, Alex, you had mentioned that we need a tiered tax structure for the lower margin operators to operate against lower tax thresholds, and maybe even have an exchange carve out. Illinois sort of followed your advice, but not really. Basically, they increased it across the board. Comment, if you can, on what happened in Illinois, and how does this affect a company like Sporttrade going forward?
I think we're going to start to see some states at least try to bring bills forward in their legislator to increase the tax rate. And I think it goes towards a learning that a lot of us on gambling Twitter are starting to recognize, which is the world outside of our bubble, which is far more powerful as it pertains to creating and enacting rules, regulations, and legislation, are not super happy about the amount of ads they're seeing on TV. And the way sports betting revenues get reported, there is this huge misconception that they're just all billionaires. If you're a bookie, you're just making billions upon billions of dollars. I mean, there are folks that see the handle number and they think that's profit for a book. There are folks that see the revenue numbers, which is a little bit closer to profit, and think that's the profit number. And the challenging thing is, at the upper end of the market, obviously facing a higher tax rate stinks. But if you're already at those economies of scale, there's actually a double-edged sword where it can benefit you because it can reduce competition down the line. So maybe you're paying a 35% blended tax rate as opposed to 20, but now you take what was 30% of your revenue that you were paying as promotions to players to induce them to sports bet, and now you can reduce that to 10%, and all of a sudden your gross margin is actually better. And so where we are starting to get involved with many states at this point is creating that distinction between a DraftKings or a FanDuel or an MGM and a Sporttrade. And where we can come in and instead of being a huge tax boon to the state, we can come in and help to bring the offshore player back onshore, to help to regulate some of the unregulated, to become a viable alternative, to use former NJDGE Director Rebuck's word, to become a viable alternative to the unregulated market. And I think as we've gotten to tell that story and create that nuance and introduce what the world is like for us as a smaller operator, there seems to be a lot of support of like, oh, wait, yeah, no, I don't want the tax to go up for you guys. Like, you guys are, just getting into the market. You're getting started. You're addressing a different part of the market. You're growing the overall market. I meant to do it for these folks because I'm seeing all these ads on TV. So that's really on us to get out there and educate legislators. And I've been surprised that at least at the outset, that story's been a very easy story to tell, and it's been received very well by lawmakers and their chief of staff and folks that work in their office. As you kind of sit down and you say, okay, for every $100 of revenue I bring in as a sports book, here are some of my costs of revenue. And so for, let's say in a given state, I'm bringing in $100 of revenue, I may only have $40 or $50 of actual net revenue to then offset all of my fixed costs. Starting there and then talking about how different operators can achieve different parts or different reasons why legislators legalize sports betting in the first place, some being tax revenue, others becoming a viable alternative to the unregulated market, and going from there. So I think that Illinois is all in, not terrible, because introducing this nuance and this distinction on a progressive or a graduated scale opens the door for us to come into a state like a Pennsylvania eventually, or even in New York, and say, hey, that's the top end rate, but we're going to come in and we're going to address customers in parts of your market that don't play on the regulated sites, and we want to opt into your rules. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us, but we have to sort of put in the work to put our best foot forward there.
I know Adam Bjorn was recently on a podcast, and he mentioned that he feels that 20% should be the top rate, that beyond that, sports betting is just not sustainable. Do you have a number in your mind of what that top rate should be, and what you're targeting to be a rate that's helps you grow in a state?
That's a really good question. I would say that there are market-based sports books and there are non-market-based sports books, and Prime is 100% a market-based sports book. And what I mean by that is that they take all comers. They move their markets based on real action. They're trying to find the true price of something. They profile customers to better understand where the market could be going. They recognize sports betting is a game of skill, and they recognize that as part of a game of skill, there are winners and losers. And if you ban the winners, it's no longer, and that's okay. Some books do that, and like there's a place in the market for those sort of books, and it enables them to offer types of markets that Prime or Sporttrade probably could never offer. And the thing about market-based sports books is that costs are going to be very easily passed down to the consumer. But at the same time, there's a threshold you're going to reach where, okay, it's a 40% tax or 50% tax jurisdiction. In theory, you could pass that down to the consumer, but then you recognize like, oh, am I offering a product or a price that I feel comfortable with the customer betting into week in, week out? And so the question is, where is the customer? How far expanded should the customer's wallet be? That's the better way to think about the question for at least these market-based sports books that just have to pass those costs down. And I think, obviously the lower the tax, the better. But there probably is a rate there somewhere above 20, 25, 30% where you start to, not that Sporttrade couldn't operate in those jurisdictions, it's that, we'd have to think about what the commission rate is and these sort of things. And ultimately we want the lowest cost product. That's the whole point. So it's not the easiest sort of situation.
So in your previous answer, you talked a little bit about the regulated versus unregulated. There's some not so silent footsteps that are approaching here in terms of the sweepstakes model. And for anyone that's not familiar with the sweepstakes model, you're going to get familiar with it later this summer. But we'll hold that off till later. I wanted to get your thoughts on, did regulation push us to this point? Is it to the point where regulation is too much of a barrier? And when I say regulation, I'm not talking about the small 5-member teams in various states. I'm talking about having to go through all the compliance checks and the geo-comply checks and the barriers to entry, such as market access fees that are just obscene in some states, both from the state level as well as from the license holder. I could go on and on. My question to you, Alex, is did the regulated environment push us here, or is this just a natural evolutionary growth?
I would say, as it pertains to the sweeps, I think it would be very fair to say that as the American entrepreneur, of which you guys both are, Jack, you particularly, you've started this business, right? I have felt that the online sports betting market specifically has not been as conducive, nearly as conducive as it should have been, or as it could be, for particularly American entrepreneurs to come and bring their ideas to market. I've spoken with the founders of a lot of companies, of which are either, have been in the regulated space or thinking about the regulated space or now pivoting away from the regulated space. My short answer is it shouldn't be this way. There's been far too many, huge, corporations, massive billion-dollar corporations that have been super successful and had that amazing privilege that their home countries have allowed them to start a business. And they've used that as the starting point to then pull themselves up by their own bootstrap and create a very viable business and then bring that into the US. And in countless, examples, the Unabets, the typicals, nothing against these companies, but those are the companies that got to come in, and be part of the American wagering market. And I just think that that's not the way it should have been. And now we're at a point where American entrepreneurs are creative people, and they're going to have to find ways to deliver their product to the marketplace. And they're going to have to do it in a way that is reasonable. And it's fair to say that there are certain states that aren't really conducive to entrepreneurial companies or companies that are just getting their start. And I think where we sit in this discussion is insane privilege that we're even sitting here and get to be in the regulated market and have had access to capital to get to this point, and using that platform to say to legislators specifically, because regulators, they can only do what the legislators allow them to do. The legislators sort of draw the lines. The regulators try to enforce those, is to say to those legislators, let's create a path for small, entrepreneurial, innovative companies that are going to come in and tackle different parts of your market. We already talked about the unregulated becoming a viable alternative to the unregulated market. I mean, there are so many different business ideas and things that could have ultimately come to American players. And maybe those are now going to come by virtue of the sweeps or other non-online sports betting regulated means. And to me, that's what's great for the customer. Ultimately, you'd want to bring all of these products into one regulated umbrella to protect the consumer. But I don't think it's particularly a bad thing that we're going to see these options come to the market, because speaking from our perspective, that's only going to push us. We're going to have to get better. We're going to have to deliver more products. We're going to have more liquidity. And that competition is great for the consumer. So where we sit, I think it's good for the consumer. And B, it allows us to tell a story to the legislators and say, give us a path to come into this state, to come into your state in through your front door in a way that allows us to offer something similar to what some other companies are offering. And I think states are going to be pretty conducive to that argument.
Now, are you finding it that it's a little bit easier to deal with state governments simply because there's a little more ease of access than like trying to lobby at the federal level? Do you find that you're having an easier time because of the fact that you're able to sit down and talk to just actual state legislators who are so much more accessible?
Totally. It's pretty simple. I mean, you just type in the name of the representative or the senator, and you get their phone number and you lob them a call. And most of these folks have real jobs. One of the really interesting things about when the founding fathers of the U.S. wanted to really create this new government, the understanding, the idea is they didn't want to create the concept of a career politician. They always felt that it was really important to get the real world experience of either building a business or doing whatever, and then look at politics at the later part of one's life as a way to give back and take all of that sort of expertise and apply it. Of course, the federal level, we're starting to see much less of that. But at the state level, things are way less partisan. All these folks have normal day jobs. I've walked into gyms and swimming pool businesses. I've walked into law offices. I mean, these folks have real jobs and they're very common sense people. And that part's been great. And I think what we need to do is now scale that up and begin to tell that story in a bit more of a consistent manner, because any reasonable person is going to say, yeah, I love what you're doing. You're paying taxes here. You've been here. I'd love for you to create a pathway for you to get into Pennsylvania market. You totally can't, maybe partner with a casino or pay this sort of tax. Oh, this makes a lot of sense. And here's something that I can take to the legislator. If we go and amend our existing sports betting regs, I can add this as an amendment. And that's maybe our pathway. It's not going to be overnight success. It could take years, but I think we're in this game for the long haul.
Yeah. All right. So we went down like a really heavy path there of state law and constitutional law. Let me swing back to this. I like using Sporttrade. I like using the app. And one thing I've noticed is that you get a lot of different people into that app. You get sharp bettors, you get arbitrage bettors, you get some of the finance bros that got attracted to that Robin Hood look and feel of it all. Give me one anecdote of ways that people are using the Sporttrade app that you just didn't see coming when you built all of this.
I think the biggest one is when we built this, and we have, the great thing about Sporttrade that makes us unique to a sports book. If you've listened to this and you don't know what Sporttrade is a sports betting platform where there has to be competition at the supply side level to offer you a price. And the price you see is the result. It's the output of that competition. And that's why you tend to see prices that are better than what you may see at a traditional sports book. Like you might see -110 on a handicap or a sports book. You may see -106 on Sporttrade. So I think right away we got a lot of players that just like the fact that the prices are great, and that's awesome. I think the more nuanced take that some of the customers are now taking by virtue of us being in a market for 19 months now, we've been in New Jersey, is they're beginning to understand, like, okay, I can do this thing called a limit order. And for those listening, a limit order just is, I want to choose my own price. I want a little bit better than what that current asking price is. And of course, now that allows someone else to come in and take the opposite side of that price. And what these more advanced players are starting to do is they're looking at an unabated odds screen or another odds screen. And they're saying, okay, the player prop for Luka Doncic to over 30 points is -110. And I just think that's wrong. I think he's really going to go over. And so I'm willing to take the over and I'm willing to bid maybe minus 120. And you might be asking yourself, well, why don't they just bet the minus 110 at FanDuel or DraftKings? And the reason is they're probably limited at those sites. And so they put the arbitragers to work. They say, I'm willing to take the over Luka Doncic 30.5 points at minus 120. And that allows someone on the other side of Sporttrade after the commission to come in at plus 118 and take the under. And so now you take the under as a customer, as an arbitrager on Sporttrade of Luka Doncic's 30 plus points, 30.5 rather. And now you can go into DraftKings and FanDuel and take the over at minus 110. And we've had customers that really use this to their advantage, particularly for player props, particularly for NBA player props. And they just have an opinion and they have a model and they want to get down, and they recognize that the moment they put their limit order at a certain price, they're going to light up all the odds screens, and customers come in and take their side on Sporttrade and the other side on a FanDuel, DraftKings, wherever. So that's been really cool to see. And that's one of the great sort of reasons why exchange betting is so cool, is that you have this unique ability as a participant to really sway what the current market price is, both on the Sporttrade site, but also what we've seen from these sort of players is that if enough arbitrage players are betting the over 30.5 of Luka Doncic at minus 110, that market's going to move. So how cool is that? You can move the global market for a player prop market on your couch. That's really, really cool. So that's a sort of a more in-depth way that some of the players are using Sporttrade. And I think that's something so cool about limit orders.
Yeah, and not only that, you're weaponizing a screen like Unabated against the unabated subscribers because you think you're sharper than they are. And hey, you might be. It's an opinion game, right? I think that's brilliant. I think that's a great way to use it. And kudos to anyone who's kind of figured out that way to play chess on a checkerboard.
Yeah, it's really just being able to be as creative as you can. And like we've mentioned through this entire thing, places like Sporttrade give you the opportunity to think about betting a little bit more outside of the box. And the more people that we have bringing outside of the box the ideas into the betting marketplace, the better it's going to be for everybody when people have more freedom and can get more creative with it. But
Totally.
what's next for you guys over at Sporttrade? I know we talked a little bit about some stuff that we're not going to talk about here before the show, but what is coming up this summer and beyond that people can look to at Sporttrade?
Yeah, so we had this amazing opportunity to go to the SBC Sports Summit. I was regrettably out of the country, got to go to Italy. It was incredible. First time there. And David Huffman, our COO, got to sit down with Jesse at Betting Startups. And I think he did an incredible job of answering this question. If you're out there and you don't follow David Huffman on Twitter, he's just as involved in all this stuff as I am. So go and give him a follow. But he basically said, when asked this question, if expanding to new states isn't part of the equation, part of the answer, we're probably doing something wrong. So let's start there. Would love to get into a couple more states. Can't share anything just yet with licensing and applications and market access and all these sort of things. But we'd love to announce some stuff over the summer with you guys. We're working on more features for limit orders. Colorado, as I mentioned, will allow those starting in June. We're going to be introducing features where players can have set a limit order and have it cancel whenever they want, as little as 10 seconds after they've placed it. Really good for in-play arbitrage bettors specifically. We're working more enhancements for the tape, which is exciting. We are bringing Android up to parity with iOS. That's a longer term project, but we're so excited about that and getting it into new states as well. And then, just preparing for hopefully incredible liquidity for football season. I think it'll be head and shoulders above where we were last year, both from an in-play and pregame perspective, and having just a full suite of player props for every single NFL game as well, kind of similar to what we had for the Super Bowl this year. Yeah, super excited for the football season for what customers can expect.
Alex, that is awesome. And thank you so much for sitting down to join us today to talk about all this stuff. I've had a fantastic time, as always, with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in person, hopefully this August. But in the meantime, of course, if people want to follow you and everything that you're doing, they can follow you at A_Kane47, and they should head on to getsporttrade.com. That's getsporttrade.com. Download the app today if you are in New Jersey or Iowa or Colorado better. Have I got all three now? Or where are you guys live right now?
We're live in all those 3 states, but even if you're in any of the other jurisdictions, go and check out our app. You can see the tape and you can just see like, what players are betting on in real time, which sometimes some points during the day it's really dull, obviously. And then in the middle of the, Dallas Celtics game 1, at halftime, it's going to be crazy. So yeah, go and check that out. Even if it's just a reference check or reference point for you, Sporttrade can have a value for you, even if you're not in one of the jurisdictions where you operate.
That is a great point, and I definitely can say that I've been using it a little bit for that too. So it really does help, and people should absolutely be checking you guys out. Again, that's getsporttrade.com. But for now, that is going to do it for us here on the show. Again, Alex, thank you so much for the time today. Thank you all for listening. You know the drill. If you like the show, tell a friend. If you don't like the show, tell your enemies. Let them listen to us instead. And of course, hit us with that 5-star rating and review. And if you want a one-on-one demo to check out all of the tools that we have for you at Unabated, use the link in the description of this video. Sign up for a one-on-one demo. It'll most likely be me sitting down with you to walk you through everything that we have to offer at Unabated, how you can best take advantage of all of our tools on places like the awesome Sporttrade app. Alex, thank you again so much for your time. Best of luck, everybody, this week. We'll be back next week. But in the meantime, let's cash some tickets. We'll see you next time.